Okay, welcome to our question and answer session tonight about becoming a nurse midwife. And so I'm Tonya Nicholson. I'm the Associate Dean of Midwifery and Women's Health here at Frontier Nursing University. That's me. And I'm going to give you a little bit of info first about how to make the screen look so that you can see everything you want to see. So if you go down to the bottom right-hand side of the page, there's a little bar that says default layout or custom layout. It has several things. If you click beside it, you have several options. I have put mine into the presentation meeting mode simply so that on the left of your screen you see the slides, and on the right you see me, and you can actually enlarge me if you want to. There's also a chat box up above my head that you can type questions into. You are welcome to unmute yourself if you have your microphone on. You're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask your questions aloud, or you can type them in, and Brittany will help me make sure that we get them all answered. Okay, so I'm going to get started about how to go about becoming a midwife when you grow up, if that's what you want to do. So first, I want to remind you what our mission at Frontier is, and we're just circling back to this in all the sessions this week because that's what our theme is. Our theme is about being mission-focused. So our mission here at Frontier is to educate nurses to become competent, entrepreneurial, ethical, and compassionate nurse midwives and nurse practitioners who are leaders in the primary care of women and families with an emphasis on underserved and rural populations. And what that means to me is that when I was deciding to become a nurse midwife and where did I want to go to school, I wanted to be sure that I found a university whose values and ideals lined up with mine. And this lines up with my ideals, and so it was a great place for me. You know, deciding what you want to be when you grow up, and I laughingly say that because we reinvent ourselves all the time, even as adults we do that. But deciding that you want to do something beautiful with your life and then embarking upon that path and having what your passion is and your career overlap is not only a beautiful but a blessed thing. And I am so confident in the fact that those of you who want to be nurse midwives, if you put your mind to it and you work hard in your nurses, you can do it. And then what happens is true magic. The magic is in living out your passion in your career, and I am blessed to get to do that every day. These are some of the words that are used to describe midwife. And so I want you to think about what this is, what the work of a midwife is. It's about being wise and supportive. It's about being literally, the word midwife means with woman. And so when you're trying to evaluate if this is the correct path for your life, some of you are already students, some of you may be considering becoming students, and that's the target audience for this. If you're already a midwife and you're here just for some inspiration, I hope you'll jump in and join me as we talk about what being a midwife is about. But it is a profession that allows us to be with women in many places in their lives. Clearly, most people remember or know about being with women when they're having their babies, but also in other passages of their life as they become adults, as they become women, as they grow older, and as they have children of their own, and they're bringing those girls in for care. It is a wonderful and exciting profession. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. That's what I know the most about. My first midwifery job was in Winter Haven, Florida, and there's a little poster from our group. And I remember interviewing for that first job. I was so scared and excited all at the same time. And it was a patient population that matched my mission. It matched the mission of Frontier even. It was a high indigent population. There were a lot of patients who were of Hispanic background. And I jokingly put up that I throw my Spanish in the air sometimes. It's the truth. I did the best that I could. I took some courses and some classes. But you know what? One of the biggest and most exciting lessons that I learned as a midwife was that we have much more in common with one another than we do different. So even if our language separated us a little bit, our desire to have healthy families and have healthy babies and to care about one another was a common ground. And the language of birth is kind of common and defies all barriers. And so even though I might not have been the best communicator in Spanish, I'm sure I was not, the women were so gracious and forgiving of me in that and accepting of me, and I was so glad to be able to walk alongside them on their journeys as they expanded their families. It was wonderful. And then the time came that our parents here in Georgia were aging and needed us to come home, and so we moved back home for that reason. And now my current, and those words look all weirded out, sorry about that, but my current clinical experience is in my little hometown here in Dublin, Georgia, and the guy there in the picture is the physician with whom I work. His name is Dr. Mark Bowles, and I'll tell you that finding the right partner that shares that same vision, that shares those same values, that shares that same mission was pivotal in finding satisfaction in the practice that I do here in my hometown now. My main job is with the university. I'm so blessed to get to be a midwife to you guys as students. And then I practice clinically a little bit in a practice that dovetails beautifully with my mission as an educator and my mission as a woman and a midwife. So that's really important for me, is to be able to speak to all of those things. And that's just a little ad that he and I did when we spoke together at a little conference here in town about decreased libido, and it was like the man-woman, he said, she said thing. It was fun. So life as a midwife, what can I tell you? I can tell you that still to this day, after having been in practice for now 17 years, when the phone rings in the middle of the night, even if I am very tired, I am so honored to get to go be with women in those points of vulnerability and strength that they have as they expand their families and give birth to their babies. It is the most exciting, rewarding, crazy life that I would do over and over again. I would choose it again in a heartbeat. People ask me that. They say, like, can you do this for a lifetime? Yes, you can. You have to sometimes make choices about the kind of practice that you're in. You have to sometimes make choices about your family, and so you might not be able to do a crazy, busy practice that's you're on call 24/7 for all of your life while you have a little bit of kids. But there are lots of kinds of practices. There are lots of ways to set up practices. There's lots of people that now, as midwifery is becoming more mainstream, thank goodness, the population is beginning to have a more comprehensive understanding of what midwives do, thanks to, in part, our FACNM national organization that has produced lots of material for the public, and also thanks to Call the Midwife. People that have never thought about midwives before have a deeper appreciation and understanding of our profession. This is one of my favorite quotes. A midwife must possess the hand of a lady, the eyes of a hawk, and the heart of a lion. And I think that speaks to our gentleness, our watchfulness, and our bravery when it comes to helping our women, guiding our women, and supporting our women in finding the kind of care that they deserve and need. That is to the left there, the Care, a Woman-Centered Approach, is a textbook that many of our Frontier faculty have chapters in, and it really speaks to what being a midwife and being a women's health care nurse practitioner is about. It's about making sure that at the center of that care team that's at the bottom, see, that's us in a team. We do not practice autonomously. No one does. The physician that you might work with eventually does not practice autonomously. He has a team around him where he can refer, that he can collaborate with, that he can confer with, and within that team, ultimately and most importantly, the woman is at the center of that team, so that our care includes, encompasses, and surrounds her so that it best meets her need. So I'm going to stop right here. We're going to talk about being a student in a few minutes. This is a recent picture where I was with a woman at a beautiful birth, and I'm going to say, what are your questions? And we're going to ask questions about student stuff later. But what are your questions about what it means, what the life of a midwife is like? I will tell you, I'm going to go ahead and keep talking until we get a question. It is highly variable. There are many different business structures for midwifery services. There are a few midwifery services in the United States that are literally shift work, just like nursing shifts, 12-hour shifts. Those are in large areas that are very, very busy. There are some practices on the other side of that, home birth practices, whereby it is midwife-owned. The midwife sees her group of clients for their whole pregnancy, does their births, and it's her. It's her, and her. Then there's a lot in between that. There are freestanding birth centers, and the birth center is a great place for the practice of midwifery. It is generally very often midwife-owned or co-owned and run. And so it is a place of business for the midwife that understands midwifery in a way that very often the hospital system does not. Then there are in-hospital birth centers, and then there are hospital practices, and there are private practices where midwives maybe don't do births. Maybe they do triage, or maybe they do outpatient work alone. So there are lots and lots of ways to be a midwife. There's not one formula. I would say that on a daily basis, depending on the client makeup of the practice, you may see women who are from the age of 11 or 12, just starting their periods, all the way through postmenopausal women. And so there are some practices that do almost all obstetrical care, and then there are others that have a good mix. The practice that I work a little bit in has a good mix. I do a lot of GYN care. I take care of pregnant women as well as young women who are coming in for birth control or sexually transmitted infections, or sometimes just education, to be perfectly honest. Also, primary care is a part of the role and the life of a nurse midwife. We take care of women, help with diagnosing and initial treatment of things like diabetes, hypertension, thyroid disease, etc. And then either depending on the level of care that's needed, they may see us for that primary care, or they may be referred out or collaborate with our physician colleagues. Does anybody have any questions about the life of a midwife? And I'll move on to student stuff. Looks like nobody's got a question. Okay, so I'm going to talk, this little next section of slides is for the midwives. It's for life as a midwife and life as a student. All right, one question. I was wondering if you think it's beneficial as a new grad to always start with a full-time job, and usually there are long hours. There usually are long hours. Almost all, I would say that it's beneficial to start with a full-time job if your life allows for it. I will say that there are more full-time jobs than part-time jobs for midwives, and one of the reasons is the malpractice insurance. Most of the time, if you are employed by a practice, the practice very often will take on the cost of the malpractice insurance. And because of that cost, they would want somebody practicing full-time. So that wouldn't necessarily be true in a practice that you owned yourself or in a birth center practice. So there are, thank you, Tyler, for unmuting me. There are part-time jobs out there, but there are more full-time jobs than part-time jobs for nurse midwife. And the hours can be long. It's highly variable. Like I said, there are a few of those shift-type jobs. There are not a whole lot of those. There are a lot of practices that do maybe a couple of office days a week and 1 to 2 call days a week. Those are moderately busy practices, and those calls may be anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. And then weekend call varies. Some practices break up their weekends across their practice, and some practices, one midwife does 72-hour weekend call. I would say that it is very helpful, and I'll tell you what, one of the things that I really wanted and was able to get in my first job, and that is I wanted to be able to be with women in labor. I did not want to be in the office and on call at the same time. It varies from practice to practice whether that is feasible and acceptable for them, But that was one thing that was important to me and that I was able to achieve in my first job, and that was to be able to be with women and therefore have the post-call day off so that you weren't trying to go to the office and be crazy and you were not in the office and on call at the same time. Another question. I also asked, same person, asking because I was wondering if you have small kids right at the beginning, is it just expected to just take what you can get and it will be hard in the beginning? To a degree. And the reason I say that is babies come 24 hours a day. So the idea that you're going to get a job that doesn't include nights and weekends is not very practical. Now, are there some out there? Yes, there are. I don't want to mislead you. And when you say take what you can get, I want you to think about looking at the whole practice. So if you're looking at a practice in your town, so the benefit to you, or to a close town, benefit to you being that you don't have to move, that your children can remain in where they have been, your husband, if you have a husband or a partner, can remain where they are. So let's say for a minute you're looking at the risk-benefit ratio, and you have the benefit of those things. On this side, it's not really reasonable to expect to walk in as a new person in a practice and get everything you want when other people are not practicing in that way. Now, so that means being a team player. And that means walking in and saying, tell me about the kind of practice that you all have. Tell me about the kind of schedule you have. Is there any flexibility in that? But to think that you're not going to do nights and weekends is probably not reasonable, because that's when babies come, and that's a big part of what we do. Now, you may find a job like that, but there are not a lot of them. I don't want you to be surprised by that. And the expectation in most practices is that you are taking call as well as office days. So, and, generally the way practices work is if you have practices that have a longevity of midwives in them, often as midwives get to a certain age, it may be that they don't take call anymore. So it's not usually the new folks that are not taking call if there's anybody in the practice not taking night and weekend call. Does that answer the question that you had? Now, I was in primarily most of the time in a full midwife practice, and the reality of that was that I did 1 to 2, usually 2 office days a week, 1 24-hour call during the week, and 1 72-hour weekend out of 4. So what that meant was that 1 24-hour call could be crazy, but I was going to be off the next day. The 72 weekend hour call could definitely be crazy, but I was going to be off for the next couple of days before doing a day or two of office. And so I did, and I had small children at the time, I did find that to be a reasonable schedule. So good examples. I hope that helps some. And so it depends on the busyness of the practice, whether or not you're having to balance call and office, and whether or not how many office days have to be covered a week for the practice. Okay. So I'm going to talk about how do you make that work then. So those were great questions to lead into this. So with what can be an unusual and different kind of a schedule, how do you make it work? How do you have a work-life balance? Well, I will tell you that I've never thought much about work-life balance. I like the idea of work-life integration, and that is finding an assimilation of work and life activities that I can live with, that satisfies me and my family. And so for me, that meant, for my personal family, that meant that I wanted to be within a practice of people that supported one another, and we worked with each other to be able to go to our kids' events. So the midwives with whom I was in practice, one of them also had kids that were still in school, and so she and I would often trade time. Like even if I was on call on Tuesday and the kids had a ball game Tuesday evening, she would often keep an ear out for call during that time period so I could be sure to go to the ball game, and vice versa. We would do things like that very often together. And then, and I found, and this is just good practice, I think in general, I found that I preferred to to be the favor giver and to help cover other people, so that, and not to ask for help often, so that when I asked for it, people were more than willing to do it. And so I prioritized and always thought, you know, which things are most important so that I can be satisfied, so that my family can be satisfied. And that seemed to work for us. You know, there's just no such thing to me as true life-work balance. Every bit of it is life. You need to be present in it. And the joy, for me, the joy that I receive within the profession more than makes up for the sacrifices that have to be made on the other side. And, you know, you have to say, okay, so what about my kids, though? What about my family? What about my friends that I might not be with on X, Y, or Z day? What it meant through the years is that they learned a commitment to their profession. And my kids are all grown now, and they talk about the joy that I talked about with them regarding my job, and how important that was, and that it made them really know and believe that you can find a profession that brings you the kind of joy that makes you want to work. I'll tell you that what I do with practice, I would do for free. I'm glad I do not have to, but I would do it for free. I love it that much. True life integration is ever-changing. It's different for everybody. It's different at different seasons in your life. And I cannot really separate work and life. It overflows for me. I get texts from patients saying, Miss Tonya, blah, blah, blah. And I might be at supper and I text them back. And but that's what works for me. That does not mean that that's true for everybody. But I consider most of the women that I serve my friends. And I don't give out my personal number to every single one. I don't want to mislead you. But many of my personal friends are also in our practice, and so they do have my personal number. And I'm honored that they feel that they can trust me with their personal lives. Another part of attaining happiness and joy through the profession of midwifery, and while you're a student, students listen up, is the concept of resilience. The definition is adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. And like it or not, school is stressful. I know you all know that. You didn't know that? It is. I bet you knew that. School is stressful, and so sometimes that means digging in and adapting what your priorities and goals are, keeping the main things, always your family, your career, and your school. But some of the other things may have to shift around in order for you to adapt and be able to be resilient in the face of stress. Now, I have put pictures of baby Seth up there. There's his name tag for work, and there he is in his wheelchair. Because for me and my personal life, he is a picture of resilience. If you want to know more about him and his story, I'm going to be talking about that later this week in a session about caring for families and about why caring at every intersection that we have with clients and their families makes a difference in their outcomes. And so I'll tell you more about that later. But the bottom line is your ability to be resilient under stress and within stress allows you to thrive. The way that I find that I have to do it is I have to pay attention to everything about myself. I have to take a walk every day. If I do not take a walk, almost if I miss one day, I'm a cuckoo head. So I have to take a walk every day. I have to do things that stimulate my mind and also that relax my mind, if that makes any sense. I have to pay attention to my emotions and to loving the people that I love and putting time into that. And for me, spiritual life is I equate with my faith and whatever that means to you. I have to pay attention to all of those things in order to be able to do well, balancing life, not balancing, right? I just said that, integrating life, work, school. So if worst comes to worst, chocolate cake always helps. I had a piece last night. Confession time. Okay, question. When you say you integrate your life, do you hold office hours at home to keep yourself grounded and focused, or you tend to choose answering calls throughout the day no matter what, and within that, how often are you off? Sorry. I'm going to be real honest with you. I answer calls quite a bit. But the reason I do that, so I don't think that's the way for everybody. The reason I do that is then I do not feel guilty if I don't do it for an hour during X, Y, and Z time, because I'm doing it all at all other times. And so it works for me. It does not work for everybody. Some people have to really make sure and protect. Now, I'll tell you, I protect Sunday. I protect Sunday because my husband and I have limited time together. He travels with work and I travel with work. So I protect Sundays, and I do not generally take appointments on Sunday. I rarely answer the phone or a text on Sunday because that is protected time for me. So that might be different for you. It might be evening time, but my husband's not here right now in the evenings. Like today, he's not here, so I'm doing this at 6 o'clock at night, not a problem. So within that, how often am I off? You know what? I am off. I'm off a reasonable amount. I'm off on Sundays. As I said, I do not work on Sundays generally unless somebody really, really needs something. I am off. Now, you have to remember, though, I have a university job that's a full-time job, and I see patients a little bit. So I have a little extra piece in there that I have to roll into it. And many of my friends and my kids' friends are personal clients of mine. And so, you know, that's not real work to me when they call and ask a question or need something. That's my personal feeling about it. Work-life integration is different. Remember that slide. It's different for everybody. For me, this works. It works because this is the way my brain works, and I like to flip from one thing to another. So that means this afternoon I knew I was going to do this tonight. This afternoon at 4 o'clock, I was not sitting at my desk. I went to see about my eyeglasses at 4 o'clock. In office or hospital-based care, I do a little bit of office and a little bit of hospital. So I work for a private physician a couple of afternoons a week but not even every week. And then I do an occasional weekend call. I contract for that call time. My real job's with the university. I call this my real job. And then I have my extras that make me feel real, like the Velveteen Rabbit. I feel like a real midwife when I get to touch mamas and babies. And so that's why I do it. That's really why I do it, because it makes me feel real. So if all else fails, eat a piece of cake. All right, so now I'm going to move into a little bit more about students specifically. So if you know you want to be a midwife, and I've piqued your interest, I hope, with the passion and excitement that I have for our profession, how do you go from here as a nurse or currently as a student to being what you really want to do? Well, your actions and your words, your ability to be successful in school, taking the next step and putting your application in if you haven't done that. So let's talk about questions about becoming a nurse midwife student or being a nurse midwife student. So as I go through the next set of slides, if you have a question about being a student or about becoming a student, please give it to me. So it takes a village. Here at the university, you have a village surrounding you. As a student or as an incoming student, here's some of your people. I'm the associate dean. That's me up in the right-hand corner with curly hair. That's actually how it normally looks, and this is a lot of work, even though it doesn't look that good. And then around and about there on the lower left-hand corner is Dr. Jane Houston. She's the clinical director. So I'm responsible for the entire department. Jane is responsible for the clinical side of things and then comes to me if there's something that she needs my input in. You also have credentialing folks that help take care of getting clinical sites ready. You have a professional advisor that is with you all through your university career to help you with registration, with policies, and things like that. You have course faculty and course coordinators. You have regional clinical faculty who are faculty members that live in the region where you're going to be doing your clinical, and they serve you as your advisor during clinical, and they talk with your preceptor, and they talk with you about your clinical experiences. You have financial aid. You have an admissions office. Oh, my gosh, you got folks all over the place because you know what? It takes a village. So we all want to be part of your village. So I'm going to tell you about my life as a student nurse midwife. That is literally my badge from when I was back in Frontier. Those are some eyebrows in that picture. But I had to balance the things that you guys may be balancing too. I already had 3 children at that point. Baby Seth was 2 or 3. So they were like 3, 5, 7 or 2, 4, 6, something like that when I came to midwifery school. So I had them when I was in nursing school as well. So I got that wrong. Seth was more like 3 or 4. So I had to balance work. I worked as well as a nurse at that time with the children in school. And there in the middle, at that time, Frontier did not have a master's program. And so we had a relationship with Case Western, and I had to go in the snow, which was a sight for me from this Georgia girl to get my master's. Okay. How soon before application needs to be submitted should you have taken the GRE? The GRE is not required for application. On the last slide that we get to tonight, there's going to be a link there that you can go to our website to look at what's required for application, but GRE is not required. You do have to have had at your most recent completed degree that is related to nursing, so either a BSN or if you have a master's degree or an ADN, if you're an ADN nurse and that's your most recent degree, you have to have had a GPA of a minimum of 3.0. You have to have had a year of nursing experience. Thank you, Tyler. It doesn't matter what kind of nursing experience. You do not have to have been a labor and delivery nurse to become a nurse midwife. Those skills are helpful. They are not required. And so those are the things that are required to make application, and then we score your application based on several things, including your nursing experience, your experience with your certifications, your GPA, some essays that we ask you to write. So I'm going to go on from here and talk about who could come to Frontier. If you have an associate, an ADN, or an ASN, we have a bridge program. That's a bridge entry option that allows you to come in, do 1 year before. That is essentially the bachelor's work. You do not get a bachelor's degree. You go straight on into the master's program, but you are able to do it without going and getting a bachelor's somewhere. So there's an ADN entry option or ASN. There's a bachelor entry option, and there's a postgraduate entry option. So somebody that already has a master's degree but is not a midwife and wants to come back and become a midwife, we have a postgraduate option as well. You can come in and get a master's, you can get a postgraduate certificate, you can get a doctorate of nursing practice. And then there are the general time frames as far as general time frames for completing the master's. And if you're going to do the bridge program that is for the associate degree nurse, you would add a year to those options. And if you're a postgraduate certificate, okay, sorry, y'all. I got knocked off and I'm coming back on. Can you all see and hear me? Can somebody let me know?
I can hear you.
Yes, great. I don't know what happened. I apologize. Okay, so I'm back. A question. I'm currently in nursing school at another school, and I'm curious about the Bridge Nurse Midwife programs as far as transferring goes. The Bridge program is for people who already are nurses but are associate prepared versus bachelor's prepared. So we do not offer a basic nursing degree. So you have to be an RN already and have at least a year's experience. If you have an associate degree, then you can come into our bridge program and do that 1 year prior to going into the master's portion. We do have some options for transferring some credits into the master's program up to a maximum of 12 credits, and there are specifications as far as which courses could transfer. So a course like an evidence-based practice course that is a graduate level course, or maybe an epidemiology and a biostatistics that's a graduate level course might be eligible for transfer. However, a course that is in the midwifery portion itself, so like the antepartum, postpartum, newborn, intrapartum care, we do not accept transfer for those clinical management type courses. So that's all laid out in our catalog. if you would like to email me, I'm going to give you my email in a minute. Actually, Brittany, could you type it in to them? You're more than welcome to email me, and I'm like a great traffic controller. And what I'll do is I may not answer your question myself, but I may connect you to the right person to answer it if I don't have the answer right at my fingertips. So I promise you this, pinky swear right now, I will not answer money questions, but I will connect you to the right people. You don't want me answering your money questions. And on the specifics on the application, I would want you to get that from the admissions, but I'm more than happy to connect you. Okay, can you do a dual program yet? I want to make sure I know what you're asking. We do not offer what is actually considered a dual program, but in the spirit of it, it is a dual program in that you can finish midwifery and do one add-on course to complete women's health, but it is considered a postmaster's after you finish the midwifery. The same for the other programs. So if you do midwifery, you can add F&P on. There's a lot of common coursework that you would not repeat. So in the fact that you're not repeating coursework, it is essentially a dual degree, but it is not exactly. It is actually a postmaster's. If you live internationally, but there's a FACNM who currently resides in your country, you have to do your clinicals. Currently, all clinicals have to be done in the United States, not outside of the United States and not in the territories. So in the contiguous states, Alaska and or Hawaii, for the clinical portion of the program. For the didactic portion of the program, you could live internationally as long as you have very stable internet and good service. And I know that sounds like almost like a, why even say that question, since most of our program didactic portion is online. We have had people before who thought that it would work, but their connections were not stable enough to be able to do the uploading and downloading needed. Any chance that is being considered to be changed? I'm assuming you're asking about the international. At this point, that's not being considered to be changed. I can never tell you what might happen in the future, but for right now, that's we run a hospital in rural Haiti. That's what I'm asking, and we love our Haitian midwives and our Haitian women, but at this point, we're not doing clinicals internationally. But that doesn't mean we don't want you serving there. Okay, so one of the things as you're a nurse midwifery student that we challenge you to do is to look at things differently. You're going to have to look at things differently than you had before, and sometimes that's one of the biggest challenges in making the adjustment from a nurse to a nurse midwife is to learn how to view things, stretch your mind, stretch your believability about what can happen and what should happen in care. If you've served in nursing situations that are very similar all of your career, then prepare yourself to have your mind blown a little bit as you are stretched. Our students are also on mission. You know, we've talked a lot about mission during this presentation. This is a statement that some of our students came up with. We commit to caring for women with attention to their desires, their needs, and those of their families. We will use evidence to educate, empower, and enrich the lives of those whom we serve. Lives will be valued and death will be honored as we care for families across and it should say lifespan. So I always feel like when we have students come up with this, that they've gotten it. That mission is aligned with the university's mission, and I think it's aligned with the heart of a midwife. I mean, that's who we are. We want to love on women. We want to help them to live their lives as fully as possible and with as much help as possible. So I'm so proud of our students. I don't want, however, to only present a Pollyanna picture. Now, I hope you can feel from me that I think midwifery is the best thing since sliced bread, maybe even better than sliced bread, or not better than cupcakes, just kidding. But there will be obstacles, doubters, mistakes, hard work, but there are no limits. You will have to work hard. You will have to choose and prioritize what's most important in your life at this season while you're a student. But what can come from that is so exciting. you can choose the path to become a midwife. You can choose the path to become a student. And then what we get to live out every day is such a rich payback for what you had to pay in to become a midwife that I completely and totally believe it's worth it. You know, to be successful as a student and then as a midwife, you have to choose to go to success. It is not an easy career. The highs are high and the lows are low. But when you look in the face of women and across the faces of their families, and you see the changes that are made in their lives and then ultimately in their community, changes that you helped to guide, support, nurture, it is well worth anything that you had to do. So this is our favorite day of the year. It's coming up soon, graduation day. I think my smile is as big as the graduates, and that's how I feel. As you guys walk across the stage and walk into your future as a midwife, I feel like $1 million. I feel like I have won the lottery for each and with each one of you. So I'm circling back to where we started. I want you to have the opportunity to be passionate, caring experts, compassionate, sitting with women, honorable, advocating, using evidence to support. You can be this kind of midwife, and you can be what the women in your community need and want. Now, this slide has a link in it that can take you to our Frontier website that can lead you as far as becoming a nurse midwife student. And I think that I'm going to move this so that I can see a little bit better the chat. I think that Brittany, thank you, Brittany, for typing in my email so that you guys can contact me if you would like. Is there anybody else that has a question? I am here all night if you need me. What other questions do you guys have? What's the scariest thing about doing this for you that are either students or thinking about being a student? What's keeping you? What's holding you back? What's making you scared? I know somebody has an answer. I think that many of you in your questions spoke to this, and one of the things that holds people back is the fear of what am I going to, like literally how am I going to get through this? I'll tell you that in my experience, and remember I had 3 children already and I was working as well, that yes, it was not easy. I did have a good support network around me, so I would encourage you to identify those support people early, put them on mission with you. And even if they don't really understand what it is you want to do, if they love you and are supportive of you, they can get on board with it. And so surround yourself with those people that are on the same mission and that have the same ideals and values. And if nothing else, sell them on the idea that while they may not understand exactly what it is a midwife does or what you're going to be doing, they can get on board with you as a person and the values that you have of supporting the women in your community. And then when you have yourself surrounded by those people, you can do anything. You can do anything. And that's how the women feel. That's how the women feel. When we've done our job right, the women leave a birth, they leave the office feeling like I can do anything. Anybody have any questions, comments? Let's see. All right, I'm going to move up to these questions, if I can. I am staying at home with my children, and I'm currently pregnant with number 4. My last nursing experience was home health, which ended in May of 2017. My labor and delivery experience was 2011 to 13. As far as admission, would I have a better chance of getting in if I hurry and enroll, or would it be okay to wait a few more years until my last baby is born? Either way, whatever you think is going to fit your life best, that's what I want you to do. Your experience it looks like you've got a nice variety of experience, and you've met the minimum experience requirement. So I wouldn't be worried about that. If what you're worried about is a gap, is that what you're worried about? If you is that what you're worried about, a gap of no experience? If you worried about a gap. What I'll tell you, I'm thinking about scoring on the admissions file. I usually just add up, and I think if you write in the essay why there's a gap, that would be fine. However, we love nursing babies and we love mamas and babies. We have lots of students who have babies during the program. So I don't want to dissuade you from that standpoint, but whatever's going to work best for your family, that's what I would endorse for you. Babies are so great. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Kaylee. I am so excited to get to talk to you. This is my passion, and to get to share it with you guys is exciting and fun for me. All right. Well, thank y'all for being here. I'm going to sit here a few more minutes. I'm done, but I'm going to sit here a few more minutes just in case anybody asks any other questions. My dream is to open a home birth practice. Is that realistic to do immediately after graduation? Savannah, I would say if you have some experience with home birth, maybe, but especially if you partner with somebody, I would say that you want to get some experience before you're out there on your own in home birth, if that makes any sense. Would you recommend the full-time or part-time option of study? I would say it depends on what your life looks like normally. The full-time program of study takes approximately 50 hours of study time a week. So I would be realistic with myself. I would not set myself up for craziness. And I would say, what can I really do? Now, this is what I always like to say to students. Remember that as you are studying, what you are doing is preparing to take care of women and families. They deserve for you to have the time and the energy to devote to the studies in a way that helps to make it a fabric of who you are, not just on the surface where you can pull it out for an exam. So some of you have the time to do that. Some of you do not and should do it at the slower rate. It doesn't matter. There's not a prize for getting done fast. The prize is being able to provide good, safe care to families. That's what the prize is. And the difference between the full and the part-time is only 9 months to a year. 9 months, if you do it exactly the way it's laid out. That's the length of a pregnancy, and most of you know pregnancies, well, while you're in them, they're very slow. But when you look back on them, they're that fast. So I would recommend that you really carefully look at your life and what kinds of things you can remove to make time for study if you are considering the full-time. Because you want to enjoy this. This is a sacred time. Being a student is exciting and sacred. You have a safety net around you and time to learn it. Another question. I am most worried about balance because I'm a homeschooling mom, helping minimum hours, running a hospital, and want to mom a student well, yes, and be able to get time away to do practicum in the States. Would part-time be? I would think so, Sarah, because you want to be able to do it well, like you said. And while there's some things that you can sacrifice, so I would say you don't have to sing in the choir necessarily or go to every PTO meeting. You can't sacrifice your kids. You don't want to sacrifice your kids. I don't want you to sacrifice time with your kids. Now, it might mean that time with the kids means that while they're studying, so are you. You're sitting and studying. I did a lot of that. But we have a lot of homeschooling moms, a lot of moms with young children, and they're able to do it as long as you're realistic with yourself. Give yourself some grace.